The 14th of November 2023. You're welcome back. Short-term corruption leads to long-term losses. I made a video on the late Aisling Murphy, RIP, beautiful girl, and it got a very good response. But there was an article in the Irish Independent which is behind a paywall, so I can't read it, but I hear people talking about it. And it's by Anali Bracken. Just check the name again. Yeah, Ali Bracken, B-R-A-C-K-E-N. And she's given out about the Aisling Murphy murder to be used by right-wingers and misinformation and all this thing. And I believe there's nearly no reference in the article at all. Anyway, I'd like to be talking to her. She'll run 50 miles from me, because none of them will discuss any of that with me. But I would make the point in relation to Aisling Murphy, it's just one in a long line. I looked at the pattern of who commits these crimes, and I found that it wasn't Irish as a rule. I see another article in the paper of a man who's obviously Chinese, who battered his child to death, and he has to go to jail, and we have to pay for him in jail. And one of the problems with mass migration is you have to jail these people and pay for them, the expense of them being in jail, when they should be in their own countries and serving prison sentences in their own countries at the expense of their own countries. That's one of the basics of my objection to mass unvetted migration. In any event, she has another article this time which is no big issue with, and it's in the Irish Independent as well, and it says that the heading is that Deputy Garda Commissioner postpones retirement as not a single senior officer has applied for the job. Now, I maintain, if you watch my videos over a while, what we're seeing here, you see, is that misgovernment, bad government, survives for a while. It's like printing money, the government printing money. For a while everyone feels great while they're spending all this fake money. But eventually then the crows come home to roost. And when you have bad health services, bad teaching rules for teachers, and bad rules for guards, etc., that guards are the police in Ireland, well, eventually you get to a point where nobody wants the job. And it's a bit the same with the wind farms. I've been homing down for years about the way they pay the wind farms and how it's very, very hard on the consumer, and eventually the enormous cost on the public and industry forces the British government to put in sensible payment for them. And when the auctions came up for the offshore wind, nobody applied because they'd be broke. And that proves I was right. They were insolvent and they're still insolvent. And now nobody wants to build them, and the banks won't lend them money in an increasing interest rate environment. You get the point I'm making? Now, so if you have bad nursing services, the nurses will go abroad, and they are going abroad. If you have bad teaching services, the teachers will go abroad, and they are going abroad. And that dumbs down and destroys our health and our education. But it will also impact our safety, as people who leave countries, largely because they have criminal records, because the law is tightening up on them there, run over to Ireland and lie here for a while till they get their breath, and then go out and strike again. And when they kill our citizens, they then have to be kept in prison for many, many years. Do you get my point? So now here we have a situation. It was in the paper the other day where nobody wants to join the Garda Síochána, because the word is getting round on the grapevine that it's a horrible institution, ruled by horrible people, mostly, not all. Now, the thing about it is, if a really good person, very able person, joins the Guards today and wants to get up to the position where they feel they have great managerial skills, they'll go into a station. Could be somewhere in Dublin, could be Lucan, could be Ballyfermot, could be Storshey, or it could be Tuam in County Galway, it could be Fermoy in County Cork, and a certain number of the people over them. There'll be sergeants, inspectors, and superintendents, chief superintendents, will be wrong ones, and they will spot that they're a threat. They are incompetent. They see a competent person and they'll write them down. and in most of the public service, including the military. If a senior officer writes this person is not fit for further advancement, that stays until the person is written about dies, not the person who writes it. So if this young, we'd say, guard goes to a particular station, I'm naming them just off the top of my head, he goes to Clonmel or he goes to Thurles or wherever, and he goes there and there's one wrong one. If the inspector there is a wrong one and writes this person is not fit for promotion, that inspector could drop dead a week later and be buried for 10 years. And when the guard goes up for promotion in 10 years, what that inspector wrote will stop him getting advanced. The result is those who don't think in the group think way, those who can think for themselves and who would be good managers, cannot get up. They cannot rise above it. And it's the same in the teaching profession, and the same in the health service, the same in the Navy, and the same in the Army. These people have a knack and a skill at getting to a position of power, and they're as crabbed and as vindictive as you could ever think about. And they will stop them. The result is our Garda Commissioner is from the north, or I see he's from outside the Gardaí, and we have two foreign produced senior officers there. There is 3 positions denied the Irish policeman. Now, I'm not against the odd bit of moving about among the forces. A bit of that, not a big deal. But that just proves the point. Martin Callanan doggedly stuck to the Maurice McCabe situation without judging or taking issue with that, and that to take a whole video. The bottom line is there was evidence there that there was 10,000 speeding tickets and other tickets being blocked by local officers because it wasn't them, their men got it. You see, if they had their own traffic route and caught all these people, that would reflect good on them. But what was happening with the Maurice McCabe thing was that when he reported it, and John Wilson as well, when these parking speeding tickets came in, they didn't reflect good at all on the local officer, because where was his guards doing this? If these people can detect all these speeders, why aren't the guards doing it? And so the superintendent locally blocked the whole lot of them. He squared the whole lot of them, blocked them for various reasons. They were going to school with kids, or if it was raining, or whatever. They blocked them. And so there was that motive. There was no motivation for them. There was nothing for them in it. But Callanan should have seen the writing on the wall that that was not tenable. That the Wilson Maurice McCabe thing, whatever the rights and wrongs or what the thought of the people concerned, this was not tenable. This was not going to work. Noreen Sullivan was put in. Oh, she's a woman. She was put in. It was up to her to realise the writings on the wall were going to fix this and fix it in whatever way could have been done. But that wasn't done. So who appointed her? Who appointed her? Frances Fitzgerald, I think, of the Fine Gael appointed her. So she done no good either, and that the abscess continued to fester. Now there's a centre in Tipperary which deals with all this, and the guards have no say at all. So if the local superintendent is caught speeding, he's caught. He has to pay it and have his penalty points. He can't run to anyone. And that means that it's fair to everybody. I'm not too sure if all this speed limits are set right. There is a road safety issue. I think it's a lot to do with inexperience. A lot of them are young people. That's what I think. Now, to go on about this, people are getting on to me. I'm hearing stories all the time. I was on the phone last night a long time, right? The Gardaí are not investigating crime. Nuisance texts and nuisance messages are all over the place. People are being pestered by scam artists trying to get their credit card details, and the guards could follow that up and see where the phones are, and they are not doing it. Okay, there was one case related to me of a detective where there was a serious crime close to I think it was £80,000. This is back in 1995 or 6 or there. And there was a big lump of property taken, and half of it was found somewhere local. The car broke down, or the van broke down, or whatever. But the rest of it got away. And the local detective was fairly cute, and he rang a lot of places all over the country, north and south, just letting them know he was interested if he heard anything about this property. And he got a call back from a policeman to say there was a boy who was owed money on a warrant for something. It might be no insurance on his car. I don't know what it was for. I have no idea. But he was going to prison, and he owed a lump of money, about £500 that time. I'd say that was before the euro. And he said this fella might know something. Funny enough, he says, when I was talking to him about arranging to lift him and put him in jail, he made some money, some issue, and he might know something. And he says, I think this fella might know a little bit about this property, but he wants the €500, or maybe pounds that him, fine. Or I don't know, was it in the north or the south, but it was on the island of Ireland. Could be sterling either, I don't know. But he wanted the €500 fine paid so he didn't have to go to jail. Now the police themselves wasn't going to pay it. Their job was to lift him and put him in prison, or the guards. So the detective asked the owner of the property if they could help with a bit of money. It might help. And this is highly dangerous. If a guard takes money to solve a crime, he needs receipts. And guards have been sacked and prosecuted for taking money of people who lost property and pocketing them themselves, and it's very, very dangerous. But there is a fund in the Garda Síochána controlled by the chief superintendent in every division. There's a fund for information, because the state realises sometimes you can solve serious crimes by a little bit of information, a bit paying for information. It's a well-known method. But the chief superintendent in this division, he must have been one of those that wanted his own people on every good case. So if this detective came, he'd have said, right, you'll be on the case, but we're putting Detective Inspector John Joe Francie McGurty Riley on it, and he'll run the case, you see. And then he could put it on his CV, and he'd get promoted. He'd be a pet of the chief, probably playing golf with him or whatever, and away you go. You see the thing. But the detective wasn't in for that. He wanted to get the case himself and have it on his CV for his advancement. You get my point now? Any event, the owner of the property did agree that if Hardy came to Hardy, they could come up with 200. They'd have to be written on receipts and everything, because they'd prosecute him, the guard. But if he had receipts and all that, they couldn't. So the point about it is, they were prepared to pay 200. So the detective knew that the chief superintendent was a tight out yoke, and he wouldn't give that kind of 500, but he might give 3. And he went down, and it turned out the chief superintendent was on holidays when he went over to the division headquarters, or up wherever he was, and he met a superintendent who was temporarily in the capacity of being the chief superintendent. He told him the story. The superintendent, who was only temporary there, said, if you get the property, it was something like 40,000 was left. 40,000 pounds, maybe Irish pounds, punds, about 42,000 euros was left. And he says, if you get that property, I'll give you the 200 euros, or whoever's here will give it to you. That's all right. I agree with that in principle. And the superintendent agreed that it was a good deal, but he wanted to see the goods, and that was fair enough. The detective returned thinking he was as good as his word, got on to the police in the area where the property was, got the necessary search warrants, organised with the local station and all to raid a premises, and when they raided it, they got the property. They got it, okay? I think there was some item missing or something missing, but they got nearly all of it. They got 95% of the property, and they eventually charged somebody with it, and that person was convicted. And about a week later, the detective went to the chief, who was now back on duty, and instead of congratulating him, when the detective asked him for the 300, he said, no, I don't approve of that method of investigation, he said. Now bear in mind, the detective, if he had been working and the detective went to him, he'd have said, no, you have to give me the information. But you see, the detective wouldn't give it to him, because the detective didn't want his case stolen. But the superintendent, I'm only guessing that little bit, the superintendent had guaranteed it, and the chief superintendent refused it. The detective went back to the owner who came up with, no, he gave him the 200. He put 100, he had to put the 300 out of his own pocket. And eventually, on hearing it, the owner of the property was so glad to get the property back, he gave him another 100. All highly irregular if investigated. In any event, the detective decided to do something about it, and he wrote out a full complaint and delivered it to the Garda headquarters. And the following few days, the local superintendent, who had nothing to do with the detective, with the superintendent who offered the money, different stations, same division, the local superintendent called him up and he says, I have instructions here from the commissioner, you're to sort this out with the chief superintendent himself. In other words, go back to the culprit who did it and sort it out. Garda headquarters refused point blank to assist. The proper thing for the Garda commissioner to do was to order the chief to pay the money, if necessary to send an agent down and interview the detective, but he did nothing. A chief superintendent, I said this before, provided there's no official inquiry, can commit any crime. They can do anything inside or outside the job. But if it gets so far that they're dealing with drug dealers and that they're bringing the whole thing down, they will move on them eventually. I'm not talking about small little bits of things. I'm talking about serious things. They're just beyond all control. Superintendents, chief superintendents and above. In any event, I tell that to you. That is some mess. That is still going on. There is nothing changed. Nothing changed. And that is why you have this situation here where this is Anne-Marie McMahon, a lady, she's a commissioner in Dublin. There you are, there's the article. Anne-Marie McMahon. Now, she had to postpone her retirement. I presume she's wise to all this. You see, Gardaí, they come up through the force or PSNI, or come up through, they know the local rules, they know the laws. You bring them in from Canada or Britain, our laws are slightly different. It's not that easy, do it. But they can't get the job, because our people, as I say again, insist on voting for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and next Sinn Féin, and all these left wings, and they have no idea and do not care. And in 1996, the Irish people put Army Pay number 6 in their concern and Law and Order number 14 on the concern. And so we have these murders and all this going on. And in the end of the day, as is what I'm working to do, is get people to realise when they take the pencil in the polling booth, they could be murdering somebody by their indirect action. The officer who holds the second most important job in policing has been compelled to return to the role for 3 more months because of lack of interest by senior Gardaí. Garda McMahon, Deputy Commissioner in charge of policing operations, had been due to retire on December the 3rd. So obviously policing operations is an important portfolio, organising all that staff and everything and all that. Now, however, the Sunday Independent understands she is now agreed to remain for another while to this hugely important role. The sensitive positions carries the responsibility for all policing and national security operations, including the fight against organised and gangland crime, terrorism and espionage. Now, there you are. We're living in a country, well, Anne-Marie McMahon was doing a good enough job, it appears, but we're living in a country where nobody wants this job. Does that not alert anybody? She has now been asked and has agreed to stay on. Right. The respected officer has been in charge, okay, for 6 years. She's been there for 6 years. The original closing date for applications for the role of Deputy Commissioner through public appointments, there's some crowd of idiots. The PAS, the Public Appointments Commission, all political hacks. And they do on all these nursing and all these teaching, they do have a civil servant, and as I always say, they do have bellies on them like harvest frogs, and they'll ask them about somewhere in the Ural Mountains, some town in some way out place, to try and knock the confidence and esteem of the candidate and them up to try and fight organised crime in Dublin. These idiots just getting a job out of sitting there and getting gratification out of it. idiots, that's what they are, and big bellies on them, always. They always big bellies. I do get feedback from them. They always have huge bellies, men or women. Oh, there was them. Oh man, dear. Anyway, the thing about it is, the original closing date was that October the 26th, and it was extended to the 9th amid speculation that the quality of applicants has not been significant standard demanding the role. So who is the quality? Who decides the quality of applicants? And why are there no quality of applicants? Who are the existing officers who could fill the role? Is there some low-ranking sergeants who might do a good job? They have no method to assess that. There's no way that those people can assess that. Security sources confirm a number of high-ranking guards collectively decided not to apply until some financial concerns involving issues about their pensions were addressed. Yeah, they're hitting the pensions with a tax. One issue for senior Gardaí is that officers are finding themselves obliged to pay a large tax bill on their pensions after retirement. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it follows the introduction of a new tax regulation 10 years ago, which taxed public service retiring with pension pots worth more than 2 million. But that wouldn't be 2 million a year. That'd be overall the full value of the pension. So it must be most of them. Minister for Finance Michael McGrath has announced a review of the financial issues that senior officers are preventing them from applying for a position, but that will not be concluded until next summer. Meanwhile, the gangland murderers can run riot. Once concluded, the minister said she will then consider the outcome of the examination. He's some ass, Michael McGrath. What an idiot! What an idiot! Considering anything. That shows you where we are, huh? But it is claimed another reason is lack of interest. But it is claimed that another reason for the lack of interest is in deputy commissioner job is the link to the low morale, which has now spread even within the force's most senior ranks. The morale of the Gardaí is rock bottom, with these idiots, with a Minister Ryan in the cabinet. What do you call Roderick O'Connor? It won't be long till they'll have Gardaí in Mountjoy Prison and Wheatfield Prison serving sentences for not calling a prisoner who is obviously a male a her, or writing a wrong mistake. That's what is coming. They think they can shove this woke stuff on all the public service and jail them for not complying, and then they're going to get applicants, right? So this lack of morale has spread. There are 8 serving Garda assistant commissioners and around 40 chief superintendents nationwide who would be eligible to apply. 6 of the 8 assistant commissioners are career Gardaí, while the remaining 2 are members of the PSNI who have never held any other rank within the force. See, that's a weakness. That's a weakness, where if you got a high officer there who knew these criminals and all that, and that, well, there'd be some hope of them. They can hit the ground running. It's not that I'm against the other ones. Part of the issue is financial, but it goes a lot deeper than that. The belief until now was that the disillusionment and poor morale was only being felt by rank and file and mid-ranking Garda. Now we know it goes all the way to the top, and that's a condemnation of Commissioner Drew Harris, in my opinion. A separate source added that the number of high-ranking officers had discussions among one another, and a number of them collectively choose not to apply. So for generations, guards were all trying to get promoted, and now they won't take the promotion. That is some turnaround. So not to apply. This was done to send a message that of the disquiet within the senior ranks. It has been received loud and clear, continued the source. I don't think it has. Do you think that Drew Harris is capable of being impacted, or even others? Do you think that these ministers I'm after mentioning, these are dumbbells? The ministers, particularly the politicians, are dumbbells. They will not understand anything. They don't know where to turn. The deputy commissioner also stands for Garda commissioner. The deputy also stands in for Commissioner Drew Harris when he is on leave. Okay. There is another deputy commissioner, Canadian-born Shanwa Coxon. She is in charge of non-operational issues, including strategy, governance, and performance. That looks like woke to me. Do you see the portfolio? Strategy, governance, and performance. They brought in a performance development review thing where guards had to have a certain amount of prosecutions and all this, and they never built into it the fact that criminals can strike in any area and the guard has to leave and go and solve the crime. That was in 1996. That fell through. that fell through. They brought in job rotation, that fell through. All of this fell through, none of it thought out, the very same as the wind energy and the solar energy program that I am personally fighting and challenging them and successful fighting them on. Right, so now it says that Commissioner McMahon was well regarded. And so at a meeting of the policing authority 2 weeks ago, she informed the body that an investigation had been launched into Garda anti-corruption unit, into the Garda unit itself, into an alleged circulation of internal WhatsApp messages between Gardaí that reportedly contained false information about 2 serving female officers. At the meeting, Ms McMahon told the authority that Garda Síochána was taking the abhorrent text messages very seriously, describing the incident as completely acceptable. So the thing about it is, you have mayhem, you have our people voting for woke, cultural, failed politicians, you have the green climate change hysteria, and you have our people in danger, you have mass migration being loaded on our services, and no one wants to work for the state, because while the present reasonable economy exists, you can get a living elsewhere in the private sector where you'll be treated reasonably. These people who make these decisions have no respect for anyone. They are running a religion, and you dare anyone question it, they must hate me with a vengeance. So this goes back to the problem of applying for jobs in these services. Maybe it'll be fixed in a few years. That depends solely on will the Irish voter forget about the pothole, forget about the bit of a road being fixed outside the house a week before the election, and will he or she change and vote for whoever is not the establishment. It boils down to that, folks. That's the situation. Imagine that detectives solved a big crime, had been guaranteed to be paid a bit of money to go to a totally independent person, all receipted fully receipted at the end where it was paid to your man. He was let off his fine, the money was put into the court service, and the detective was to be given a receipt, all followed through, and the chief superintendent refused to pay over the money which had been guaranteed by his agent who stood in for him, by his replacement who was a temporary replacement while he went off on his holidays. This has to be happening all over the place, because I do have to verify these things and I can't know all of what is going on. It's a complete and utter madhouse, both in the health, in the teaching, in the Gardaí and all. I knew an English teacher who was that bad of a teacher, and she was getting books in the library which was way off, not on the curriculum at all, and forcing children to learn this stuff that wasn't on the curriculum and teach them nothing on the curriculum. And even the travelling children got grinds. Everyone tried to get a few euros together or a few pounds and get grinds. So other teachers did grinds. And the result was that children got good marks, and she'd come out on the day after the exam results were announced, bragging that her children did the best because she was so bad that they got proper private grinds at high expense. That's in the teaching profession. Result was nobody in the school was prepared to tackle her and tell her, why are you teaching that? That's not on the programme. You stop her or get out. Nobody has the guts to do that. They're afraid they'll sue them. And in that regard, maybe the courts are partly to blame as well. But that's the story, folks. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. No wonder our little country is in such a mess. My job's not so much to change it. My job is to expose it, so that as many people that there are understand the real issues and get away from all of these newspapers and corrupt media and all of that. And just before I quit, I'm on nearly 30 minutes. RTE is in big trouble too, and they're going to have to sack 1/5 of their people. They'll do anything, but they will not change their lies, their deceit, and their propaganda and their suppression of people like myself who have a true story to tell. Folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We'll see you back for something soon.